Hi, my name is Sarah Quinn. I am a Global Education Advisor here at the Office of Global Engagement. And this training is called Managing Study Away Programs. It's tips and tricks on how to run a successful domestic field study or international study abroad program. Typically, this is run through training and development and is part of our Global Certificate Program. So this presentation is designed with faculty and staff in mind, particularly those who are involved in some way in study away programming here at the University of Georgia. And this particular presentation is designed with the intention of familiarizing you all with best practices as related to publicizing your study away program, recruiting and retaining students, preparing students for their time abroad or just away from the campus, and then maximizing student alumni once you have returned from your program. Before we really dive into those main topics, I do want to quickly familiarize everyone with the Study Away portal, which will be referenced throughout this presentation. The Study Away portal is our one-stop shop here at the University of Georgia for finding study abroad programs, domestic field study programs, learning about things that are going on in our office, signing up for advising, and even information for faculty, staff, and administrators who are involved in running Study Away programming. Our website is StudyAway or can be accessed at studyaway.uga.edu, and this is a screenshot of our homepage. So a couple of things about the portal. Our website is run off of Teradata software, which is quite prominent in the field of study abroad and international education. Most other universities that run study abroad use this software as well. And so we base our entire website off of this software. And a couple of important things to know when navigating this website or helping students to understand how to navigate this website. First and foremost, it interfaces with Banner. So when a student creates an application in our system, there's automatically some fields that are pulled into their application, so they don't have to enter in things like their GPA or their major because we're already pulling that in from data from Banner. It does require CAS login, so using your MyID and password to access applications or program planning documents for the faculty and staff. And it does require that all faculty and staff who utilize the portal remain FERPA compliant. Something that can be a little bit tricky about the portal is that it has both public-facing and back-facing aspects of the website. Oftentimes, these two can be conflated, especially for those like faculty and staff who are involved in the program planning process, which does not take place on the public side. It is not publicly accessible. So just to delineate between the two, the front-facing and public side is where anybody can go. If they type in studyaway.ug.edu, there's information about all the different programs, as we mentioned. You can get information about scholarships, general health and safety, traveling abroad tips. You can also see our calendar of events, and we'll talk a bit about how you can use this for your particular program. And then, as I mentioned before, you can make appointments with global education advisors. And this is a great resource for students who have a lot of questions that you feel like you want to get some specialized assistance with. On the back-facing end, you have applications that students are creating, the program planning process for staff and faculty, and then the whole application management portion, which we will go into great depth with in this presentation. So that's just a quick overview. I do want to mention that our office provides support for the Study Away portal in terms of, or through both training and development sessions. So you'll see those maybe once or twice a semester. And then we also do provide one-on-one support, one-on-one trainings. This is something that we really want to make accessible to anybody who is involved in any portion of Study Away program. So please feel free to reach out to our office if you would like to set up a training or a refresher or need to troubleshoot. So the first area that we're going to address is publicizing your study away program. And there are four general guiding principles that we're going to use to organize this information. And these are things that we recommend that the faculty who are designing these programs and the staff who are supporting them really sit and spend some time, invest a lot of time into defining these different aspects. So thinking about who do you want to publicize your program to? How can you reach those students? Physically, where can you reach those students? And then thinking about when will you reach those students? So the first question is, who do I want to publicize this program to? This really gets at the core of your program's philosophy, who you're catering to, who do you want on your program to make sure that it is the most successful version of itself. We have a couple of prompts here, but I mean, this is just scratching the surface in terms of those considerations. Thinking about who will thrive on this program, because all of these, or the majority of these, are for credit experiences. One of the most obvious questions is, who are you trying to reach academically? Who's going to make the best academic fit? So even just being as broad as, is it undergraduates or graduates or both? Are there any particular majors or minors that you're trying to cater towards? Is there a particular year of study that you want to cater towards? Really thinking about what type of experience or knowledge, skills and abilities, those types of things you want to involve in the program. Some other factors to consider outside of the academics, any personal or professional goals of your students. So getting a bit broader, where does this program fit into what they want to do? What their previous academic performance has been. So that can be as simple as getting an unofficial transcript or just going off of the GPA that's pulled in from Banner. It might not matter to you, and that's fine. If they've had any previous international experience, do you want your program to really cater towards students who are going abroad for the first time? If so, how are you going to support those students? How are you going to make things accessible to those students? We also do encourage all of our faculty and staff to get access to the Advocate system, which is UGA's system for recording student conduct issues. And so a best practice would be going through all of the students who have applied to your program and seeing if there are any significant issues that any of those students have had, because if they're having issues on campus, it's quite possible that they could also have issues on your program. We would also definitely encourage you to think through the physical demands of a program. So again, thinking about who is this program accessible to, what are minimum requirements, if there are any, if your program involves hiking Mount Kilimanjaro or hiking through the cloud forest in Costa Rica, you want to think through, well, how am I going to assess a student's physical readiness for this? What is that metric? And going to the bullet points below, how are you going to communicate that to students? Using your application to assess these different aspects is recommended. You're not required to have anything on your application beyond what our office has on all applications, which is a core applicant questionnaire and some legal signature documents. But as a best practice, most of our programs will add in something additional, whether it's the personal statement, whether it's a writing sample, an essay, a transcript, a resume. All of those are added with the goal of clarifying these different factors and ultimately getting at who is going to thrive on this program. We add in this last point, who would be better suited for a different program, because we want faculty and staff to get in the framework of, not every program is perfect for every student, and that's okay. Sometimes students might not be aware that a program isn't the best fit for them, and they went in and put in an application anyway. And so reframing the idea that you're denying somebody access to a program as, you're just allowing them to find a program that would be better suited for them, I think is really a healthy way to look at it. And if a student is upset and presses you on why they didn't get in, you can go back to these specific things that you've identified and have a solid reason, instead of just presenting them with, oh, well, you just didn't get in. That's not very satisfying. And so really spending time firming this up is definitely something that we recommend and have seen to be successful. So once you've identified who that core group of students is that you're trying to reach, thinking about how do you reach those students when you're trying to publicize your program, thinking through what the best medium would be for this audience. We start out with verbal as a medium, simply because we find those face-to-face opportunities for program directors and even student alumni to speak about a program. This anecdotally is one of the most effective ways to recruit students. I think that it helps students visualize themselves when they're hearing from somebody who has that firsthand experience. And so they are then in turn more interested, more excited, and I think just more enthusiastic and motivated to go create an application and to talk to their parents or whatever those barriers might be that would prevent them from seeing themselves on the program. Speaking face to face with people who are excited about the program and can answer their questions tends to really be effective. In addition, written mediums are also quite effective. So thinking through traditional posters, informational flyers, emails, and listservs. We find that there are a lot of different places on campus that are open to these different whether traditional paper posters or digital posters. A lot of buildings that are high traffic for students will have TVs that run different ads, including our office. But then we also see great success in informational bulletin boards in different departments and in the MLC, especially if you have a specific event that you're trying to invite students to come to. We also see a lot of success with the bus cards that are on the UJ buses. If you've ever ridden one of those, our office personally does use those and finds that they're a pretty high return on a low financial investment, which is always key when you're trying to keep costs down in your program. And then, of course, there's a lot of digital opportunities to spread the word about your program. We want to highlight the program brochure, which is the term for the landing page on our Study Away portal. So if, for example, I'm leading the biotechnology in Scotland program and typed in Scotland or biotechnology, on the Study Away portal, the page that would be pulled up is called My Program Brochure. And from our office's perspective, this is the official platform for your program. And so it needs to be up to date with pictures and have all of the relevant information there that a student would want. So thinking through, what are the academics offered on the program? What is that tentative program itinerary look like? What is the cost? Who is this program suited for? What are those prereqs that I need? Is it limited by major? And then, of course, there's the opportunity to apply to the program there as well. And then for digital as well, a lot of programs will open up and maintain social media accounts and invite students to join those. A lot of our programs maintain separate websites or have blogs or produce videos. All of these are great and effective in reaching different types of audiences. But we do want to say a couple of things about these. If you do have any of these platforms, just please make sure that they are kept updated and they provide consistent information with your program brochure, because as I mentioned, that's the official UGA platform. So if there's differing information between the two, we would always want students to defer to the program brochure. But that's an ideal world, so we don't want conflicting information out there. Additionally, you don't want to undercut your efforts by having a social media account that's linked to your program, but that hasn't been updated in a few years. So if a student stumbles upon it, they're going to just go ahead and assume, oh, this program hasn't run for a few years. This isn't a good option for me. So there is also the time and energy factor that goes into maintaining all of these. So if you're a program director or support staff who it's really just you running the program, this might not be the best time or use of your time and energy. And in that case, we would definitely encourage you to lean on our office and our social media accounts, our websites, our blogs, our videos, because those are platforms that we do have the staff to maintain them regularly. We have, overarching strategies in terms of what we put on these different platforms. And then we can always make sure that they're consistent content with the program brochure. So don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel. Don't feel like you have to devote a lot of time and energy into these separate things. We're really happy to help with promoting your programs on these different platforms that we do maintain. So the next question you should ask yourself is, where can you reach these students? There's a lot of overlap with the previous slide, but thinking through if you're going to have an event or an informational session, or you're going to hang up a poster and you don't have a ton of posters, where should you put those things? Where should you host those meetings? Think about where your students naturally gravitate towards. So wider access points versus specific access points. If you're just trying to reach undergrads in general, well, where do most undergrads congregate or pass through? The MLC is a great kind of central meeting place on campus that is accessible to a lot of different students from a lot of different areas, and a lot of people will pass through that particular building and use it. So if you want to have a general meeting, or you want to hang up a poster for your program that is interdisciplinary, that's a great place to do it. Study centers, lounges, those other on-campus spaces that a lot of people pass through can be really effective in recruiting a wide variety, a high volume of students. However, if you're catering to a more specific group, so if it's only open to, business majors, or if it's only available to students in the art school, think about where are those places in those areas, whether it's the college itself or a building where students are taking most of their classes. Think about places where students congregate there or spend a lot of time there. And essentially we paint it as the choice between the MLC versus a departmental classroom. If all of your students are already in the art school, you don't need to bring them all the way over to the MLC, because that is an additional barrier to students accessing your information. And then, thinking through what are those already existing events and, things that are happening that are already on your students' radar that you can just plug into, rather than, spending a lot of time and energy and reserving rooms and adding things to people's calendars. Just plug into already existing events. So whether it's doing classroom presentations, within your own classes, within your colleagues' classes, if there are departmental guest lectures that are coming to your particular college or department, say a few words before those start, or be around afterwards with brochures so that students can seek you out if they're interested. If there are events, performances, shows, anything that your department or college is hosting and you're really trying to reach those types of students, be there with posters, be there with a little sign-up sheet. That is a great way to attract specific types of students. And it's a great way to attract a high volume of specific types of students, since they're already going to be at these things and their minds are already, turning, or their wheels are already turning in terms of thinking, okay, this is a successful professional in my field. How could I get to where they are? Or maybe a guest lecturer will plug, study abroad as a formative experience, or field work as a formative experience, or something that they're currently doing, or something that, if they're hiring, that's something that they like to see on a resume. So even just taking the time to ask the guests to plug those types of experiences as being noteworthy can be really strategic. And then, as I mentioned, remember your online presence, your program brochures, your blogs, your websites. Those are sort of static places where students can grab information from, but there are also a lot of active ways to engage students, whether it's hosting webinars or information sessions online, kind of like what I'm doing now. I'm sitting in my office recording this, but I can then disseminate it, or I could potentially say, no matter where you are, if you're interested, log in at 9 a.m. on a Monday and you can access this webinar and ask me questions. Something else that can be really, really engaging are Instagram live stories if you utilize that platform at all. Because you can have people ask you questions. You can see a student or a professor, program assistant in a setting that's relevant to a study abroad or a domestic field study. You can do Instagram takeovers where maybe a student who's studying abroad is showing people, okay, this is where I live and this is where we go to class and we're doing a field visit and we're meeting these different types of professionals. This is probably our most widely used platform for the students that we try to reach in our office in general. And so we would definitely recommend utilizing Instagram. And like I said in the previous slide, if you don't want to go through the process of starting your own Instagram, just let us know, lean on our Instagram. We're happy to promote your program and even highlight your students as well. So then thinking about when is strategic for these different events to happen. If you want to host a webinar, if you want to have an in-person information session, we recommend kind of overall thinking about when is your application deadline, and then having events prior to the deadline so that you can drum up that student interest. You can get applications in the portal. You can answer questions that students may have that are preventing them from putting in an application, and then hosting events post deadline. So maybe students have been accepted, but there are a couple questions that they have before they commit to the program. Hosting those types of events can really secure students' interest, lock them into the program, and ensure that low enrollment that you're trying to reach. We've seen as a best practice that programs that are able to host at least one person event per month tend to have higher levels of application and more or quicker turnaround in terms of students who have been accepted actually committing to the program and then the program filling up more quickly. Now, that being said, we understand that a lot of programs do not have the bandwidth or the personnel to make a once a month event happen. This is really like the goal. But doing something once a month can be really helpful, whether it's just shooting out an email to all of the people who have put applications in your portal and saying, hey, here's a really cool article online about the destination that we're going to, get excited. Or whether it's, again, plugging into a pre-existing event or trying to do a classroom presentation. All of these things can drum up support and drive people towards applying to your program. The idea behind doing these in-person events is also to build relationships, not only between potential program participants, but also between you and the participants. Getting to know each individual and the developing group dynamic can be really helpful in terms of how the program actually runs academically, and then also personally. Maybe students, if they develop a rapport with you, will be more comfortable asking questions. Maybe there will be fewer behavioral incidents, and there's just in general a higher likelihood of students reaching out to you proactively with their concerns. And we see this more and more in terms of mental health. A student might feel more comfortable disclosing a mental health challenge that they have to the program director or program staff prior to program departure. And this is great because then you know what to expect. You can work with them in terms of any proactive measures that can be taken. You can do the research yourself and find out what support is going to be available to them in your destination country or destination city if it's domestic. And again, just really proactively prepare for those types of needs and know how to support them most effectively, rather than getting a student who didn't feel comfortable disclosing things and then ends up having some sort of an issue that detracts from the quality of the program. So really, really work on establishing these relationships, and figuring out, who are these people who are applying to your program, and are they going to be successful on your program? And then, just remember that OGE is really here to help you. If you're feeling lost, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're looking at the number of applicants in your portal, and really feeling like it's not as many as you need, let us know. We're happy to use some of these channels to help recruit students with you and to inform students about opportunities with your program. One really effective way to reach a lot of people is to use listservs. So we have a listserv that runs through our office that's called CISA-L. It stands for Students Interested in Study Abroad. And essentially any student who comes to any of our OGE events, whether it's the Study Away Fair, whether it's a scholarship meeting, whether it's a classroom presentation, or whether they're just interested in learning more about study abroad and they email us and are like, hey, add me to this listserv. You can easily reach thousands of students here at the university just by sending out a quick blast about an informational meeting on CISA-L. So if you are interested in promoting your program or an event on CISA-L, you can just email us with the content at studyaway@uga.edu. We also, here in our office, all of us advisors are on the Advise Connect listserv, which is campus-wide for all academic advisors. And this is a great way to promote programs as well, because advisors are student-facing and are meeting with students and talking to them about different options. And so if your program needs a little bit of a boost, if you want to promote them among a certain group of advisors and students, we're happy to send out a blast on Advise Connect. And then, of course, I've mentioned this a few times, we have our social media platforms that are regularly updated, and we do regularly run promotions for different types of programs. So we're happy to incorporate you all into that calendar. We do also have our OGE events calendar, which is on the landing page of our website, studyaway.uga.edu, and it's updated all the time. So if you have a one-off event or a recurring event, just let us know when it is, where it is, brief description, and we can plug it in on our calendar. And so anybody accessing studyaway.uga.edu would be able to see where that event is happening. And we're also happy to connect you with on-campus partners. This means that if your program is focusing on agriculture and the ag school, you're in the ag school, you can promote it there. But there's also a business aspect. Maybe you don't have a partner over in Terry. We're happy to facilitate that introduction and see what you two can come up with when you are connected. Or if you are, trying to reach transfer students specifically, because the credits that you're offering are really relevant to upper level first year students, something like that. We're happy to help connect you with somebody who coordinates transfer students. So just keep that open dialogue with us. Let us know how we can help. We're happy to plug you in any of these different ways. All right, so now that we have gone over different ways to publicize, who to publicize to, we're going to now switch gears to recruiting and retaining your students, which, as the section name implies, there's a lot of overlap with the publicizing part. These two things tend to happen simultaneously, but we wanted to go ahead and segment it out because there are a couple strategies that are a little bit different from what we were just talking about. So the guiding principles of student recruitment and retention are that you're trying to mitigate barriers for students. The three main types of barriers that we commonly see here at our office, and I think are also pretty nationally recognized in the field of international education, are academic barriers, financial barriers, and personal barriers. As you're thinking about strategies for communicating to students about how to overcome these and actually helping them overcome these, you're wanting to think about this as going hand in hand with the publicity that you're promoting, and all those different events that are ongoing. So first, thinking about those academic barriers, when you are in the process of designing your program, or when you've honed in on that academic opportunity that your program's affording a student, we recommend being aware of how your program could potentially fit into a student's academic path. And what we mean by that is understanding, if you're in ecology and you're running a program with ecology academic credits, how would the academic credits that you're offering check off boxes on a student's degree works? Are they required courses that every third-year student needs to take? If so, what are those prerequisites? Could they be waived for the study abroad? If it's more of an interdisciplinary general program that's open to everybody, thinking through, is this an upper level elective? Does it check the box for a particular degree works requirement, like a world languages and humanities? So really being able to articulate those things can, again, help students envision themselves on this program, because a lot of our students are very familiar with the different classes that they absolutely have to take, and they're not as interested in programs that might not fit into their degree works. So if somebody who's advertising a program is able to answer these questions, maybe a student hasn't even thought of it yet, but if you're coming and promoting this by saying, hey, this will be one of your upper level electives, or hey, this is part of your required major courses, and if you're going to do it, why not do it abroad or in the field? That can be a really convincing argument, both for the student and then for, if they have to convince a family member or a support system that needs to financially assist them, or just in terms of convincing them culturally, maybe they don't have that concept of study abroad or domestic field study. It's not as ingrained. And so if they're able to articulate these very specific links, there's a higher likelihood that they'll be able to participate in the program. One of the best ways to talk to students about, how this study away program could fit into their academic path is by planting this seed early. So even if you're targeting third-year students, making time to go speak with first-year students can be a long-term investment, so that from the beginning, they're planning on the summer of my junior year in college, I'm going to do this program, because then they can, they're not going to be caught off guard by the finances of it. They're going to be saving money. They're going to be talking it up. It's not going to be a surprise to anyone that they're doing it, which is great. We get a lot of students in here who want to study abroad, but they have used up all the credits that they could have taken abroad, and they don't have the money, and all of these other things that they could have potentially worked out if they had that long-term plan in place. Also communicating this information, about it being a required course or fitting into a student's degree works in this particular way, communicating that to your department and college's academic advisors is really helpful, because if for some reason a student slipped through the cracks, they haven't heard about your program, they do have to meet with an academic advisor. And so an academic advisor can just lay that out on the table and say, hey, you need to take this particular course. Some students take it here, some students take it in the field. That can be really compelling for students to hear it multiple times in multiple ways and from multiple people who understand its academic implications. Also, just letting students know that across the board, I know there are a lot of exceptions to this, but overall, a lot of students can get experiential learning credit and an experiential learning approved opportunity through domestic field study and study away programs. So for each specific college, this can vary, but overall, a student is going to be eligible for the Experiential Learning Scholarship, which can mitigate financial barriers, which we'll talk about next. But also a lot of students are going to be looking for that box to be checked on DegreeWorks and that requirement to be taken care of. So being able to articulate that to students can be really powerful. So I just mentioned financial barriers. And so this is huge because in general, I would say anecdotally as an advisor, most students are coming to me with questions about finances, study abroad, and to a lesser extent field study, but these are expensive opportunities. And so being able to understand as a program director, as support staff, what those financial pieces are and what the obligations are, and then where to find support can be really helpful, because there are a lot of misconceptions out there about the finances of study abroad and study away opportunities. I would say the most common ones are that tuition is the only cost associated with the program. That's not true. There are also significant program fees for most of our programs. And just being able to articulate to students, well, what is a program fee? Why is that different from tuition? And so we're always happy to reiterate that, but since you all are the ones talking to students, it can be really helpful to say up front, you need to think early about how you're going to pay for the program fee, how you're going to pay for the tuition, and how you're going to pay for the airfare. The three big costs associated with most study abroad programs and most domestic field study programs as well. And this can all be broken down in the cost of attendance sheet, which is on everyone's official program brochure. And so walking through that with students can be really helpful, because at first glance, it's sort of a matrix of a lot of numbers, and you see a huge number at the bottom. But being able to articulate to students, this is the maximum possible amount that the study abroad opportunity will cost you, tends to make things a little bit more approachable if they start to see, oh, this is an estimated airfare. Oh, okay, because I have Hope, because I have Zell, because I have Pell, this is going to subsidize this tuition portion. And really going through line by line, one by one, what a student actually might pay versus what's written down on that sheet can be really helpful. We also recommend that you all are familiar with out-of-state students versus in-state students and the tuition rates that they're going to pay. In general, we say that out-of-state students pay in-state tuition for all study abroad and study away opportunities. The big caveat is that if you're doing a domestic field study that does not leave the state of Georgia, then you're going to see students paying whatever tuition rates they pay here in Athens. So if you have a student from Michigan who's paying out-of-state tuition here in Athens, and then they do a domestic field study in Sapelo, so they don't leave Georgia, they're going to be paying out-of-state tuition rates while they're at Sapelo. Now, that being said, we do have a lot of out-of-state students who receive a scholarship that subsidizes their out-of-state tuition, so they receive an in-state tuition rate. In general, we see that those students do not get that scholarship money in addition to paying in-state tuition. So just telling students, encouraging students to talk to whoever their scholarship coordinator is about those specifics can be really helpful, so that they're not anticipating a ton of money, but then they have to scramble to come up with money for themselves at the last minute. And then just knowing that Hope, Zell, and Pell all apply to the tuition of a study abroad program, study away program, in the same way that they apply here on campus. And if you want to know the exact rates semester to semester, you can reach out to the Office of Student Financial Aid and get a per credit hour breakdown of how much money those different scholarships cover. And then the Pell Grant actually can be applied to a program fee or the UGA institutional fees associated with a program. And again, for those exact rates, we would encourage you or the student to reach out to the Office of Student Financial Aid. It's also very important as the program director, as the program support staff, to be able to communicate program deposits and deadlines regarding those deposits. So what's a little bit tricky about our deposit system is that it's set by, or the deadline is set by the program director. So once a student is accepted, a program director needs to communicate that students need to both commit to the program and pay their program deposit by whatever date is specified by you, the program director. It's just an internal deadline. There's no system-wide consequence if they don't, meet that deadline. However, what the consequence would ideally be is that you as the program director, if they don't meet that deadline, you're going to waitlist them. And so that way there's still an opportunity for them to participate in the program, but you're able to extend an acceptance to another qualified student instead of, waiting to see if the student will ever commit. And so for students who are a bit concerned about coming up with money for the program deposits, in general, for domestic field study, that's $150. For short-term study abroad programs, it's $300. And for semester-long programs, it's going to be $500. Articulating to students, this is not extra money that you're paying, it's actually from the program fee. We calculate one program fee and then just take an initial chunk of that and ask you to pay it up front as a program deposit. That can be really helpful in terms of students kind of envisioning where this money is going, why they're paying it, and helping them to understand that this is going to be due up front. So planning to have an extra $300 or $500 in your budget can be pretty significant for some of our students. And then letting them know you'll need access to a credit card or a debit card to pay this through the StudyAway portal. If students are struggling with that, maybe they don't have access to a card, or they've got a lot of restrictions on a card, they can pay with check or money order, but they will have to physically come to the Office of Global Engagement to complete that transaction. Then thinking about program fees, that's a completely different can of worms. So the deadlines are set by the bursar's office, not OGE, not the program director. And those deadlines are available on the bursar's office's website. The program fees are going to be due all at once. If your student's doing a semester-long program, there is an opportunity for a payment plan, but for our short-term programs, so Maymester, summer, the program, payment plans are not an option. And so you do need to let students know so that they're not relying on that option to pay small chunks of a program fee over a long amount of time. Something else I do want to note is if you are leading a Maymester or summer program, it is totally possible that the deadline set by the bursar's office is halfway through your program. And as an OGE policy, we ask that students pay their program fees prior to program departure. So whichever comes first, your program departure date or the bursar's office deadline, whichever one comes first is when the student needs to pay. And the reason why is because students who participate in a program are not technically a student if they haven't paid. And so that raises a lot of different liability issues, legal issues. And so we want to avoid those by having students pay in full before they leave. There are ways for you all to watch over this, which we'll get into in a bit. But just to really hammer home this point that this is something we really expect the program to watch over, that's really important. We also want to make sure that students are aware of the details of the withdrawal policy. Students technically are reading through this withdrawal policy, signing an electronic document on their application, and saying that they agree to comply to it. However, it's very rare when a student actually reads this in detail or really understands the implications. And so I would say, the actual program director becoming familiar with the withdrawal policy can be really beneficial, especially as students are asking questions or, waiting to hear back from a scholarship before committing to a program. Just letting them know that 120 days out from the program departure date, a student becomes liable for a percentage of the program fee if they choose to withdraw. If they have any very specific questions that you just don't feel like you can answer, please do feel free to send them our way. We also want to encourage you all to be familiar with scholarships that are available. Clearly, there are a ton of scholarships, and I'm only listing a few here. It's really only scratching the surface, but just being able to point students in a general direction can be helpful to let them know that there is money out there. And then even just directing them to us and saying, make an advising appointment to get more specifics. That can make these financial barriers feel surmountable. So being aware of experiential learning and the OGE General Scholarship, and knowing that there are 2 deadlines each academic year, one in the fall, one in the spring, and that if a student is of high financial need, they really should think about prioritizing the deadline in the fall so that they can withdraw from the program without severe financial repercussion if they don't get that scholarship. There's also, for honor students, the HISP scholarship. This is available to second and third year honors students. And then there are a ton of departmental scholarships as well. And then those being UGA scholarships, there are also a lot of non-UGA scholarships. So if you have Pell Grant recipients, if you have students with active duty service, military service members, if you have students who are underrepresented, if you have students who are interning for credit in an Asian country for 4 weeks, all of these things there are scholarships for. So let students know there's money to be had. We're happy to walk them through what makes them more competitive. We're happy to come and speak at an informational meeting for your program. Just make sure that you're using us to help make your students feel like they can overcome the financial barrier to participating in your program. And then lastly, knowing that UGA scholarships and financial aid are dispersed 10 days prior to the program departure date by the bursar's office can be critical for students, especially as they get worried, I got the scholarship or I have a loan and I haven't seen it yet. And my program, the semester's starting tomorrow. Well, it's dispersed 10 days prior to the program departure date and our office has nothing to do with it. So all questions can be directed to the bursar's office for that. Okay, the last big type of barrier is in some cases one of the most significant and the most complex. They're personal barriers. So thinking through, we come to think of UGA students as, a typical profile, but there really are a lot of outliers to that typical profile. And some of those students, their circumstances are such that they don't envision themselves going on a study abroad program, or maybe they, would love to go on a study abroad program, but they can't figure out a way to overcome some of the circumstances that they have. And so I would say being attuned to that as a program director can be really helpful. Understanding, for example, what type of mental health services are available in your destination country. How does the health insurance that students get on UGA programs, useful to a student with XYZ condition? If a student has specific family commitments, maybe they can't go on your semester-long program, but maybe in your college there's a week-long program over spring break that might be more accessible to them. So these are all things to be considering to help establish a relationship with your student, but also kind of know where to guide them if a student does disclose to you that they're concerned about something. Alternatively, if you proactively promote hey, if you go on this program, you'll be covered by this insurance. And so you don't have to worry about XYZ. And just sort of assuming that every student might be interested in that information. You never know. You might be communicating that to a student who just had no clue that was even an option. And so you're widening the access points for sure with communicating that information proactively and unprompted. Then thinking through, what support and accommodations are available to students abroad, being open and communicating what those look like. If you're going to a developing country with less infrastructure, what does that mean for a student who might have a mobility issue? What does that mean for a student who might have severe asthma and, there's a lot of dust? And just being really practical about, who could do well in that, and then what accommodations are available for students who might not walk into that situation, totally prepared to take on those external factors. And then making sure that all of this information is communicable to parents and support systems. Clearly with FERPA, we're not necessarily allowed to proactively reach out to students and support systems, but maybe writing every single email with parents and support systems in mind, or encouraging students to share certain information with parents and support systems can be really, really helpful into getting those very important people in the students' lives on board with the idea of studying abroad. Okay, so once you have successfully publicized your program, you successfully recruited those students, you've retained those students, the applications are in the portal, how can you prepare students for their time abroad? And so there are kind of two things that we'll be looking at here, the nuts and bolts, so going really into detail about registration and payment and insurance, and then looking at your pre-departure orientation and what we recommend putting in that. So nuts and bolts, due to our decentralized model of StudyAway programming, there are a lot of offices involved in many crucial aspects of study abroad and StudyAway opportunities. So course activation, registration, payment, these are all in some cases handled by 3 completely different offices. It's not always an intuitive process for us, for program directors and staff and OGE. And so with that in mind, it's definitely not an intuitive process for students either. So if you as a program director or support staff can get an overall kind of workflow in your mind, you can better explain to students, or at least better point them in the direction of who can support them. Communicating early and often, reminding students about certain things and who to go to and when and deadlines is really, really helpful. And we find that the programs that are able to communicate early and often tend to have the least compliance issues. And just to specify, so there's kind of 3 parts to the process after a student has, successfully committed and paid their program deposit. You want to make sure that the academic courses are activated and that students enroll in them and pay for them. But you also want to make sure that students are enrolling in their SABD or FSTY placeholder course and then have paid the program fee for those courses. And the 3 big players in that process that I just named are OGE, the academic department of the program director, and then the bursar's office. So digging into what I just said, there are these SABD and FSTY placeholder courses. Every single student who's participating in a StudyAway program should be enrolled in one of these 2 types of courses. So if it's a study abroad, you get an SABD course with 4 different numbers after it. So for example, SABD 1000. Say that is specific to my study abroad program that goes to Morocco. Another study abroad program that goes to Morocco might have SABD 1001 because each SABD is unique to the program and charges a program fee that is unique to your program. FSTY is for field study courses, works in the exact same way. So these placeholder courses are activated by our office. So there's nothing you need to do to get that process going. And so the program director will be emailed by our office once it's activated and once it has been I guess, tagged with the particular approved program fee for your program. And so we'll email you all that information, and then it's really incumbent upon the program director to provide students with that information and say, you absolutely have to register for this by this date. This is how you do it. And then monitor enrollment as well. And as I mentioned, it's critical for billing the students for the program fee, but then also in terms of institutional data, it is the official tracker by which the university measures participation in study abroad and field study programs. So in addition to an SABD or FSTY placeholder course, your students do also have to register for their academic courses. So if I am going on the UGA Bali and Beyond program, I need to register for my SABD placeholder course to charge me the program fee for my Bali and Beyond course. But then I also need to register for 2 different anthropology courses because I'm going to be taking a total of 6 credits across 2 different academic courses in Bali. So I'm registered for a total of 3 things on Athena: my SABD, 1 anthropology course, and then a 2nd anthropology course. The program director must work with their academic department to provide students with permission of department or permission of major or prerequisite override, whatever is necessary for them to enroll in those academic courses. And then really we lean on our academic departments to ensure that students are enrolled in those academic courses. Because as you can imagine, the SABD placeholder or FSTY placeholder bills for a program fee, but the academic courses, successful registration means that a student not only is going to be enrolled and getting academic credit for those particular courses, but they're also getting billed for the tuition associated with however many credits they're taking. And as I mentioned before, students must be registered for all of these different courses, academic courses and their SABD or FSTY placeholder course prior to program departure, even if the bursar's office deadlines for payment occur after the program's start date. This is critical because students can be and have been removed from programs if they are not paid in full. There are no payment plans available for Maymester and summer programs. And even if they're doing a semester-long program and can do a payment plan, tuition is the only amount that can be placed on a payment plan. So not the program fees, which tend to be the most expensive part of doing a study abroad or field study program anyway. So please communicate this to students early, communicate it to them often. Okay, so all students who are going on study abroad programs will be enrolled in CISI insurance. This is a cost that is built into the program fee that they're paying. They do not need to pay anything outside of this. They do not need to register themselves for CISI insurance. We will take care of that for them. When our office does enroll them, cards will be sent to each participant via email. And if for some reason they don't get the email or they lose the card or whatever, just let us know. We can auto generate another card in a matter of minutes. It's very easy. Insurance under the CISI plan is really comprehensive and very easily accessible, much more easily accessible than health insurance here. And I think that communicating this to students up front can really mitigate barriers in terms of getting health insurance, because I think a lot of students are very used to the process here in the United States. And so letting them know that if they don't have money to pay for a medical service, you can call up CISI like en route to a hospital or en route to a doctor's office and set up direct payment option so that there's no money exchanging hands. CISI will take care of that for all of them. And we have done this many, many times. So it's quite seamless. Students and staff and our office can open up cases proactively. So if we know that a student needs to go to the doctor's office tomorrow, we can open up that case and get that set up. We can also open up cases in real time. Like I said, while a student's in a taxi going to a doctor's office. And then we can set up cases even retroactively. So even if a student has paid for their, seeing a doctor, we can set up a case to reimburse them for those services. And then we do want to underline that CISI is available for remote mental health services and assessments. So if a student is battling depression or anxiety, just having a lot of issues with cross-cultural adjustment, let them know that they can Skype with a mental health professional. It's really, really easy to arrange and often can be done within 24 hours, if not, almost immediately. So do let them know that the service is available. If students and staff are traveling before or after the program, they can individually enroll in CISI insurance, and they just need to be in communication with our office about that, because it's kind of a headache if there's any overlap in insurance enrollment. And so they would just need to chat with us by emailing steadyaway@uga.edu. We'll get that all squared away for them. So pre-departure orientation is really critical in terms of preparing students for their time abroad. This is mandatory. We require all field study and study abroad programs to provide a pre-departure orientation. Think ahead proactively about alternative access options for students who might not be able to attend, whether they're working, whether they're out-of-state students, whether they're already abroad and they're not going to physically be able to make the session that you hold. So you can record webinars, offer one-on-one meetings, offer an option to Skype in. Lots of people do very creative things. So if you're struggling to figure out a way to make your mandatory pre-departure orientation accessible, let us know. We're happy to help. And we do have a template that you are welcome to use that hits a lot of the highlights of what we encourage people to address during pre-departure orientation, but you are also welcome to design your own as long as some key pieces are addressed. And this is not mandatory, but we do encourage program directors to invite guest speakers and on-campus partners to have time to speak as relevant at your pre-departure orientation. So the Office of Emergency Preparedness is a great partner for developing a country or destination profile and just providing students with some information about what to expect when they get there. What are some, cultural norms regarding access to different types of services? What are the kinds of conditions that they're going to experience, and how can they proactively, work to address them? So lots of helpful information there. You can also talk to the health center and get a representative to talk about, vaccinations or health issues, public health issues that could be related to the destination you're going to. The LGBTQ Resource Center is a great partner here on campus to address issues in the LGBTQ community as relevant to your destination, how that community is viewed culturally, but also legally. Are there any laws that you need to be aware of before you go to a certain place? Institutional diversity is awesome in terms of speaking to wider issues of different cultures, going to different destinations, what to be aware of, how to prepare for those. If you have any alumni of your program who had a particularly formative experience or dealt with challenges in a productive way and could be of value to helping future students see how they dealt with those challenges, that's always a great type of guest speaker to host. And then, leaning on the diversity and expertise of the larger UGA community and seeking out students or graduate assistants or even professors from your destination country or city to come speak about different things to consider before and while they're in that in that destination. And then, of course, our office is happy to help as well if you need us to speak to some of the more bureaucratic things related to OGE or the Study Away portal, or just in general. We've got a lot of expertise in our unit and in our office about traveling to different countries, how to prepare. And our office staff does give a lot of general pre-departure orientations for non-UGA programs. So we really do have an expertise in this field and are happy to help. So some things to think about including in your pre-departure orientation. Think of it or reframing it as setting expectations for their academic, behavioral, and destination kind of aspects of the program is really a helpful way to frame it, because you want to all be on the same page about what you all are going to enter into together. So academically, this tends to be straightforward, having the syllabi ready, being able to communicate to students what they need. If there's going to be spotty Wi-Fi, are you going to be doing a lot more things outside of ELC? Are they going to need to carve out time to find good Wi-Fi? Are they going to have access to all the different materials, books, things like that they'll need? So just being upfront with students about how they can prepare and then what the on-the-ground conditions are going to be like can be really helpful. Then thinking through behavioral expectations. I would say academic are pretty similar to being here on campus, but behavioral kind of encompasses this idea that you're with students 24/7, which is quite different than just teaching a class here on campus and only meeting with students for 3 hours, twice a week. So thinking through, what are your behavioral expectations? What's going to be realistic? What's going to be enforceable? What are consequences for different types of behavioral issues? What circumstances would lead to a student's removal from the program? What does due process look like for a student who's accused of something? You hate to be a downer, but it's really helpful to outline everything from the beginning so that everybody's clear. And if an issue does come up, everybody knows how to react to it. Everybody has had those expectations set. So there's no surprise. And you're probably likely already dealing with a messy situation. So being able to be as clear and straightforward and as systematic as possible about, well, you did this, so now this is going to happen. It can make the best out of a bad situation. Also, of course, providing with students with country-specific information is so critical, because most students have not traveled to the specific place that you're going to. Most students, or some students, haven't even traveled internationally before or been to that particular part of the world. So letting them know realistically what to expect in terms of accommodations, what to expect traveling internationally, what to expect traveling in country. I know that for people who travel often, you start to develop a higher level baseline of, what is normal. And so I think that really approaching it from the perspective of, if I had never traveled before, what should I prepare these students for? If I've never traveled to this particular developing country before, what is going to shock students? What's going to surprise students? How can I best prepare them? And that goes with culture and norms too. So being really clear about, well, what's expected of the students? What should they expect? How can they be respectful and informed, tourists or participants in a culture? Where is it appropriate for them to participate in the culture? Where is it inappropriate for them? Letting them know all of this up front can really mitigate at a lower level hurt feelings and discomfort, and at a higher level, real international incidents. So do your research. If you need assistance, let us know. We're happy to help. Also pointing students towards different resources, both in country and out of country. So proactively, like, what are some great resources for figuring out, cultural questions when you're in country? Who are the appropriate people to turn to for what? And just having that all laid out for students in a clear way, again, is going to make them feel very comfortable and well situated if something does occur. And then also communicating to students ahead of time, contact information and protocol. If students need to get in contact with you during the program, if parents need to get in contact with students, if parents need to get in contact with you, and letting students know if you're ever going to be in a situation where they're not going to be reachable to parents. If you're going to the Serengeti Desert and there's no Wi-Fi and there's no phone service, if you're going to be going to a remote part of the country, if you're just going to be in a place that doesn't have consistent Wi-Fi and you're going to have a travel day, letting people know up front can really, really be helpful. And then letting parents know that too, or just encouraging students to tell their parents that. And to set expectations with parents about how often a student will be contacting them on Facebook or email or text, whatever that is, because we get a lot of parent contact when they're used to hearing from a student in a certain way and then they suddenly don't. So prime everybody, set those expectations. And then just a pro tip, even if you're delivering everything in a PowerPoint presentation and a lot of this information is verbal, if you have all the expectations and information that you're delivering in a written format, that can be so helpful if you're trying to refer back to it later, or if you're trying to refer students back to it later. It's just really a best practice to have all of those resources easily accessible. Okay, so you have successfully publicized your program, you have successfully recruited and retained students, you have successfully gotten them registered for classes, their SABD, they're all paid, you've done your pre-departure orientation and it was informational and helpful, and then you went on your program and you had a great time. We don't actually cover that part of this whole process in this tips and tricks module, simply because you all are the experts, and we also want to emphasize that, you all are the academic experts. You all have designed this experience for students. And if you've done a lot of the prep work and you've been intentional about selecting your students and you've been able to communicate a lot of this information to them, we typically see that those programs have the highest level of success, have the highest level of student satisfaction, and have the lowest level of just overall incidence. And so we'll leave that part to you all in terms of being the experts in that area. And then we will jump ahead towards when you've returned, how can you maximize your student alumni? And this is a critical piece that I think a lot of programs are just beginning to think about. And the reason we want to put an emphasis on this is because by far, student recommendations and word of mouth are one of the best ways to promote your program. And we say this because once a group of students has had a formative experience, they tell their friends, they share those pictures on social media, they talk to other people in their other classes about, I went to this particular place, or I studied this. I've literally sat on the UGA bus and I've heard students talking about, oh yeah, well this summer I went here and it was so cool. They're casual conversations, but they carry a lot of weight because not only do they normalize studying abroad as part of, a UGA student's experience, but they also spread the word about your particular program. And students are more likely to seek out information about studying abroad or about your particular program if they've heard about it from a peer who has gone and done it and was happy about it. So these are some of the ways that our current programs utilize student alumni. One of the most straightforward ways is once students have participated in your program, 10 days after the program has concluded, they will automatically be prompted in the StudyAway portal to complete program evaluations and to write program testimonials. And these are all accessible to you all as program directors and support staff. You can read their answers, and then you can choose to publish or not to publish certain testimonials. Evaluations will be recorded in sort of a 5-star rating system, sort of like a Yelp review, and are provided as a visual on the bottom of your program brochure. And then program testimonials can be selected by you and published. I think there's a limit to how many are visible at once, but you can publish more than that and just have it accessible if students click to see more. So that's a great way to have a static, a static assessment of what participants thought about your program, available to anybody who searches the internet for your program and finds your official program page. In addition to that, alumni can engage in both official and unofficial capacities for your program. So some of our programs will identify alumni as points of contact for student interest. So for example, some of our programs on their program brochure will list the program director's, contact info, but then they'll also say, students can reach out to these 2 students who are alumni of the program for any questions. And this is so helpful to students because they really do want to hear from their peers what something was like. In addition, we have a lot of events that are run through our office, but also through other on-campus partners. And so having alumni you can turn to table at those events, because you might not be able to as a program director, you might have class, you're only one person, you can't be in several places at once. But we've seen students be just as effective as program directors because they're able to speak to their specific experience. So don't rule out, working at the Global Open House or the Study Away Fair just because you can't be there for the whole thing. Really leverage your student alumni to take care of that as well. If you have the opportunity to have a student worker, you are able to use them to manage your applicants in the portal. At this point, you're probably familiarized with everything that goes into the Study Away portal and that management process, but many of our larger programs will utilize student workers, graduate assistants, in some cases to do this work for them. They will need training from our office, but we're happy to provide that for them, again, as long as they're FERPA compliant. We also see a lot of programs turning to students to handle social media outreach. So if you want somebody who speaks the language of their peers to handle your branding and your content, this is a great way to do it. And then just inviting your alumni to speak at interest events. We talked about this earlier, but if you're hosting an informational session, having a student show pictures and talk about how this fit into their personal, professional, and academic goals can be really, really powerful for students who are considering studying abroad with you. And then if a student really got into the program, they were very enthusiastic about it, and they want even more opportunities, there are some formal opportunities with our office and with the International Center, so with Cortona and Oxford. We do have federal work study positions, we have junior advisor positions, and we even have internships, specifically in public relations and event planning. And so if you've got a student who wants to give back more, let them know. We're happy to include them in our office. And we really do like to pull from alumni of programs, because when we send those students off to give classroom presentations, they're able to speak about their personal experience with confidence and with expertise. So in summary, it's all about planning ahead, as is everything here. It's really going to be a more effective program if you are able to dedicate a lot of time to identifying who you want on the program and thinking about how is best to reach them. Everything really does fall into place after you determine who you want on the program in the most specific way possible. I also really do encourage everyone to be clear and consistent about the reality of your program and your expectations for the participants of that program from the beginning, when you're recruiting students, all the way through your pre-departure orientation, all the way through, different things happening on the program. And then last, definitely not least, when in doubt, please reach out to OGE. We are always happy to help. And with that in mind, thank you so much for your time. The Global Education team really thanks you for viewing this information session. You can always reach us with questions at studyaway@uga.edu. Our phone number and our website is listed here. Thank you.